3 days after the healer told me I was terminally ill, Keith Bradford, the Alpha's heir, finally completed his training and returned to the pack. Rumor had it, he was back for his future mate. The Alpha had chosen a perfect match for him, a well-bred, talented girl, 2 years younger than Keith. Sweet, gentle, never even had a boyfriend. The complete opposite of me, with exes as countless as the stars. It was not until a week after Keith returned that I finally saw him, outside the treatment room. He had not changed much, sharp features, high-nose bridge, deep defined eyes. Just as impossibly handsome as he was the first time we kissed. Almost as if sensing my gaze, Keith looked up, sharp and alert. Our eyes met. And for a second, it felt like the air froze. Everyone thought I would recklessly ruin Keith's engagement, just like the wild girl I used to be. But what they didn't realize was my time was running out. I stepped forward, calm and composed, a faint smile on my lips. It's been a while, my dear brother. I could not help but whisper in my heart. These few days will be our final farewell, Keith. 5 years back, my mom got together with an Alpha, making Keith Bradford my so-called brother. The moment he saw me, Keith's expression turned to ice. However, I just grinned, acting like I did not catch the chill vibes. You're back and you didn't even drop me a line? Keith gave me a hard look for a few seconds before looking away, his voice flat. I got rid of your number ages ago. He was all cool and distant, like I was just some random she-wolf. Totally not the Keith who used to flip out if I even mentioned another guy. I squeezed my hand tight behind my back, keeping up my smile. My number's still the same, and you've got that killer memory, right? No way you forgot it. Keith just clamped his mouth shut and went silent. I swung the treatment room door open and chimed in cheerily. Ms. Rogers, how's your day going? The woman in the bed looked frail and worn. That was Keith's mom, Sylvia Rogers, the ex-Luna to the Alpha. Yeah, she was the one who lost it because of my mom and the Alpha. She did not even flinch at my words, her eyes shut tight. I did not let it bug me and told the healer, keep her on schedule with the meds and make sure she's eating okay? Before the healer could even answer, Keith yanked me out of the room. The door slammed with a bang. Keith's eyes were like ice daggers. I told you to stay away from my mom forever. My hand by my side was shaking a bit, but I kept my smile. If I don't come here, how else am I supposed to bump into you? While Keith was gone from the pack, the Alpha did not give two hoots about Keith's mom. It was just me popping in every now and then to check on her. It was out of real worry for him, and yeah, maybe a tiny bit because I hoped to see Keith again. Keith's lips twisted into a sarcastic grin. Really? You're so thoughtful. He let go of my hand, which was then red from his grip, and pulled out a cigarette. He did not light it, just toyed with it between his fingers. However, I reacted without thinking, like my body remembered before my brain did. And I snatched the cigarette right out of his hand. We both just stood there, stunned. I used to do that all the time when we were a thing. Oops, sorry, don't get it wrong. I stumbled over my words, feeling the weight of Keith's stare. I don't want you smoking yourself into an early grave. The silence crept back in. I snapped out of it, managed a weak smile and bolted. After leaving the treatment room, I stuck to my routine and hit up the Starry Night bar, accepting a friend's invite. Even with my health in the dumps, I was not about to quit my booze-fueled escapes. Mid-sip, someone stepped in front of me. Elsie, it's been ages. I looked up and there he was, eyebrow cocked. Daniel. The guy was easy on the eyes, built nicely, and kind of had a Keith vibe going on. That was why I started helping him out, this kid with no one in the world. However, college turned Daniel into a gambler, and he kept hitting me up for cash. I caved a few times, until he started stealing my stuff to fund his bets. That was when I cut him off. He did not take it well, started trash-talking me, spreading rumors about my love life. There was Daniel, playing the victim, but with a chill in his eyes. Elsie, you promised to look after me forever. Now that your main squeeze is back, you're just gonna ditch me? I just stared back, stone-faced. In a heartbeat, I chuckled softly, grabbed the bottle of firewater next to me, and stood up. Looking for cash? Down this, and it's like hitting the jackpot for 2 whole months. I gripped his chin tightly and tipped the bottle into his mouth. He coughed and spluttered, fighting for air, while I laughed, a picture of mischief. So still a fan? The crowd around us burst into cheers and hoots. Just then, the blinds of the upstairs VIP room snapped open, and a bunch of curious eyes peered down at the spectacle. Isn't that Elsie? Figures. She's practically part of the furniture here, always with a new guy. Elsie's got that sweet, innocent look, but she sure knows how to stir up a storm. She's a legend for her wild streak. You could line up her exes from here to the end of the block. She's easygoing, but she's got one rule. A sharp elbow jab from his buddy cut him off mid-sentence. Keith, lounging on the couch, glanced up with a smirk that did not quite reach his eyes. And what's her rule? It's to be like you, Mr. Bradford. Keith was no stranger to the rumors, having seen my feed filled with cozy snaps with various guys. He stood by the window for a bit before he commented, "This guy's the one who looks most like me? Guess that's why he's lasted the longest." His voice was icy, a riddle wrapped in frost, and the room fell silent, no one daring to chime in. Right then I shooed Daniel off and feeling a sudden pull, our eyes locked, mine from below, his from above. My heart skipped a beat. Without a second thought, I climbed the stairs and swung open the VIP room door. "Excuse me, folks, I need a sec to chat with my brother." The room's eyes flicked to Keith, and with his silent nod, they scattered like leaves in the wind. Then it was just Keith and me, alone in the quiet of the room. In the dimly lit room, I could not take my eyes off Keith. I was dying to see how much he had changed since the last time we were together. Keith was slouched against the window looking bored. "What do you want?" I had been a mess of nerves for ages, but a few drinks gave me the guts to pull out my phone and flick to our old photos. I shoved the phone in his face. "Be with me for 2 months before your bonding ceremony. If you don't, these pictures will go viral." The photos were from when we were an item, all cuddles and kisses. However, Keith wasn't the slightest bit bothered. He scrolled through each photo like he was admiring art, then chucked the phone on the table, and gave me a once-over. "I can't believe I ever went for a flat board like you." I was fuming, but I puffed out my chest and forced a smile. "I've filled out since then. Want to give it another go?" Keith just shrugged and smirked. "Do what you want with the photos." I snatched up the phone, swinging it with a cheeky grin. "You're about to be the big alpha and mark Miss Perfect match. If you think I won't leak these during your big moment, think again, my dear brother." Keith gave me a long, hard look, then cracked a smile. "Okay, you've got 2 months. I was floored. I thought I would have to twist his arm, but he folded easily. Too bad I did not have much time left. I did not want to die with regrets, so to get Keith back, I had stooped to that. We got back in the car, the air charged with a tension that was all too familiar. I still could not believe it was happening, my heart racing like crazy. I stepped up close to him, pressing myself against Keith. My eyes locked tightly on his lips before I kissed him. Keith did not pull away. He gave me a quick look, his deep eyes flickering with amusement. "Getting a little wild, huh?" he teased. I grinned, feeling a bit mischievous. "Hey, I just got carried away. I mean, I wouldn't want you to end up in the tabloids, or let anyone else see you like this." I knew I had looks that could kill. Some said I was ice cold when I did not smile, but when I did, I was irresistible, like a siren's call. Keith softly held my chin. As our lips met and our breath mingled, he whispered, "Now that we're an item, what else do you want?" My heart skipped a beat, racing even faster. Keith always seemed so serious, but he had a wild side he kept hidden. Me, I was all tough on the outside, but a total pushover when it came to love. Back when we first dated, Keith had me wrapped around his finger. Years later, he still had that same pull on me. Out of nowhere, a sharp pain hit my chest. My hand shook and I pushed him away, trying to hide my sudden weakness. Keith's warmth vanished in an instant, his face turning icy, the flirty vibe gone like smoke. "Elsie, playing hard to get doesn't suit you," he said. The pain was so intense, my vision started to fade, Keith's face blurring. However, even through the haze, I caught the annoyance and scorn in his voice. When I finally got my bearings, I did not even bother trying to explain. Keith left me at my front door and walked away without looking back. I had barely stepped inside when my mom called. The alpha asked your brother to come home for dinner. You should come too. It'll be nice, the whole family together. Her voice was soft, and I could not help but laugh at the irony. Why did she insist on playing the perfect mom? Anyone who did not know us would have thought we were the picture of a loving family. However, it had been 5 years since we cut ties over her decision to be with some high and mighty alpha. Other than setting me up on awkward blind dates, we barely talked. I did not have the energy to call her out on her act, so I just nodded and let it slide. The next day, around noon in the villa, lunch was just hitting the table when Keith strolled in, fashionably late. I could not help but stare as he approached. He was all sharp lines and designer threads, a world away from the guy who lived in hoodies. I was still trying to wrap my head around it when my mom, clinging to her alpha's arm, cooed at Keith. With a syrupy smile. Keith, you're finally here. Come, sit down to eat. We've all been waiting for you. I could not figure out my mom's deal. She knew Keith could not stand her, yet she kept up that Mother of the Year charade. Predictably, Keith barely reacted, not even sparing her a glance. However, Mom did not miss a beat. She was all over him at the table, fussing like she owned the place. Then she went all June Cleaver, serving the alpha his soup, and trying to pass me the bread spread like a picture-perfect mother. Too bad it was blueberry jam. I froze for a second. I was allergic to blueberries, like breakout in hives allergic. Before I could say a word, Keith, cool as a cucumber, grabbed the jam from her. She can't have this. I blinked, surprised, and turned to look at him. He was the picture of calm, like he had not just stepped into a family minefield. Mom's smile went stiff. She tried to play it off. Keith, you and your sister seem close. That's a relief for me and Alpha. The dinner table was silent, but Mom did not seem to mind the quiet. She smoothly changed the subject. Oh, Elsie Lucas, the heir to the Maury pack, mentioned he'd like to have dinner with you. I barely gave a glance. I'm booked up, tell him no thanks. I used to go along with those setups, but I was done playing the dating game. Mom's face turned stormy in an instant. She slammed her soup spoon down, her eyes icy. The whole pack knows you're out there, making a mess of your reputation. Who else would take you? I'm busting my back trying to sort out your love life, and you can't even be grateful. How long do you expect me to worry? I was used to that kind of shaming, but I could not help sneaking a look at Keith. Keith, though, was busy texting, oblivious to me. I caught a glimpse of the name Joan Ferguson on his screen. The she-wolf the alpha had set him up with. A pang of hurt hit me, but I kept quiet and mumbled, "Fine, I'll go." That got me a pleased smile from Mom. Keith shot me a look that I could not quite read. We left the villa separately after the meal. I got to Keith's car first, flashing my best smile. Hey Keith, how about a ride home? Maybe hang out at my place for a bit. Keith squinted at me, a hint of a smile. Sure. He opened the car door, and before I knew it, I was in the back seat, caught off guard. The door slammed shut, and Keith was suddenly there, leaning in close, his presence overwhelming. What's happening? I gasped, my heart racing as I started to push back. Keith made it look easy, pinning my wrists above my head with just one hand, while his other hand worked his tie loose, and used it to tie my hands together. It was dark inside the car. He dipped his head to nibble at my ear, his voice a low murmur. This is what you wanted, right, Elsie? Sure, I had been playing a dangerous game with Keith, but his words then twisted in my chest, leaving me feeling raw. What did he even see me as? Tears pricked my eyes in a hot rush, and each breath stung a little. I jerked my head up and bit down hard on his lip. Keith let out a sharp sound, but he did not stop, and my strength to fight back was fading fast. He gazed down at me, and I could not tell what he saw, but I knew my cheeks were burning and my eyes were shimmering with unshed tears. Keith bent down and captured my lips once more. When it was all over, I lay with my face pressed against the warmth of Keith's chest and murmured, "So, are you going to stick around? Maybe you could come home with me." Out of nowhere, the phone's ring sliced through the silence, and Joan flashed on the screen. Keith sat up and hit the answer button without a second thought. He switched on the speaker, and a moment later, a soft voice filled the car. "I just finished my performance, Keith. Can you come pick me up?" I had sneaked a peek at Joan's dance once. She was like a star on stage, absolutely stunning. and her voice was just as sweet and pure. I could not stop the image of Keith and Joan together from popping into my head. They would make quite the picture. Keith's face softened as he heard her voice, and he did not hesitate to say, "Sure." They chatted like old friends for a few moments before hanging up. Then Keith pushed me aside, cool as ever, and slid back into the driver's seat. It was like the whole thing between us had never happened. I was still sprawled out in the back seat, my heart aching in waves, feeling all kinds of wrong. I could not help but murmur, "The match the alpha picked for you seem pretty happy with her." Keith kept his eyes on the road, not even glancing my way, just letting out a soft laugh. "Joan was my choice, so yeah, I'm happy." That hit me like a ton of bricks. My mind went totally blank, and I just stared at him, stunned. For some reason, my heart started to hurt more and more, almost making it impossible to catch my breath. Keith pulled over to the side of the road and stopped the car. Then he finally turned to look at me, his fingers gently brushing the tears from my eyes, his touch sending mixed signals, but his voice was flat and emotionless. "I'm off to pick up Joan. You'd better grab a cab home. I don't want her getting the wrong idea." I snapped out of it, managing a smile that did not reach my eyes. "Okay." After I got out of the car, I could not resist turning back to Keith. "Maybe you should take another car to pick up Joan. I wouldn't want her to find out what her future mate and his sister have been up to here." Keith did not even give me another look, his voice dropping a degree colder. "You seem to know your place well enough, no need for me to spell it out." He drove away, leaving me standing there, long after the car had vanished down the road. The next day, I went to the restaurant my mom had texted me about to meet with Lucas, the next in line for the Maury pack. The guy was all decked out but talked like he was anything but classy. "Elsie, I don't care about your bad rep. Just be my mate and stop your wild ways, and that's all I need. I just want a pretty face to show off." I bit back a retort, but before I could get a word out, Daniel popped up out of nowhere, sliding into the seat next to me as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "Seriously? Dude, aren't you scared Elsie's gonna blow all your cash on me? I mean, we've been tight for almost 4 years now," Daniel said with a smirk. I glanced at him, my face a blank slate. Lucas' eyebrows knitted together in worry. "Elsie, is he telling the truth?" I was not into that whole setup date thing and was itching for a way out, so I just nodded, my mind elsewhere. "That's just who I am. I can't change it. You should look for someone else." Lucas' face turned icy. He held back his anger and stood up. "Elsie, I'm going to tell your mom everything that happened today, exactly as it went down." I gave him a fake smile, totally unfazed. "See ya." Once Lucas was gone, I got up too. I tried to ignore Daniel, but he stuck to me like a pesky stray dog I could not shake. I sped up, my patience wearing thin, when Daniel piped up. "Hey Elsie, isn't that your favorite brother over there?" I looked without thinking, and there in the jewelry store window were Keith and Joan. I knew the store's deal. Guys could only buy one ring for life. My heart skipped a beat, and it hurt like I had been jabbed with a needle. They looked perfect together, just as I had thought. I tortured myself, unable to look away. Then I saw Keith slip that stunning diamond ring on Joan's finger. I stood there, stunned, a wave of bitterness washing over me. Without thinking, I gripped the ruby necklace around my neck, the first gift Keith ever gave me. I had never taken it off since the day I got it. Daniel eyed me with a smirk, leaning in close enough for me to feel his breath on my ear. "Elsie, just look at you. You're like a lost little puppy." I turned my gaze away, heart twisting tight in my chest. Maybe this was for the best. At least this way, when I'm gone he won't mourn me for long. Why go and mess with their lovey-dovey scene? Wasn't it better the way things were? You pay me, and I hang out with you. It's a sweet deal. I shook off the daze, my laugh icy and sharp. Cut the crap. We're nothing, and I'm done bankrolling a thief with a gambling problem. Right as I spoke, I caught sight of Keith and Joan stepping out of the jewelry store, his arm around her. Our eyes locked, and Keith's look was icy, cutting through me like a blade. I instinctively tried to pull away from Daniel, but he clung to me tighter, his arm like a vice around my waist. Then Joan came up, all smiles. "You're Keith's sister Elsie, aren't you?" "Hi, I'm Joan." I tried to smile back, but it felt like my face was made of stone. Hi. Daniel jumped in with a too friendly, "Hey, I'm Daniel." Keith's eyes squinted, a shadow passing over his face, but he acted as if Daniel were invisible. Joan kept smiling. "So are you Elsie's boyfriend?" Daniel put on a wounded act. "Nah, I'm just one of the many guys on her waiting list, hoping Elsie will make it official someday." I glanced at Keith, his face unreadable. My urge to set the record straight faded, leaving me feeling drained. Joan's eyes lingered on me, filled with unspoken thoughts, before she turned to Keith and said, "Girls need to hold themselves with a bit more dignity, Keith. You've got to keep an eye on your sister. Her bad rep is starting to rub off on you." Those words stung like a slap to my face. I could not tear my gaze away from Keith, wondering if he felt the same way. Finally, Keith broke the silence, but his words were for Joan. "Come on, we've still got a gown for the ceremony to pick out, right?" Joan smiled softly and took Keith's arm, and they walked away together. I stood frozen, watching them go, until Daniel's voice snapped me back to reality. "Elsie, you owe me for making an appearance. I just put on a show for your dear brother, proving you're not just some reject." I felt sick to my stomach, like I had swallowed a bug. I clenched my hands and spat out, "Beat it." After leaving Daniel in the dust, I headed straight for the Starry Night bar. I ordered enough drinks to drown my sorrows and downed them like there was no tomorrow. However, for some reason, the booze that used to dull my senses only sharpened them this time. Stumbling home, reeking of alcohol, I barely noticed the tall figure waiting by my door until I was almost on top of him. It was Keith. I froze. Our eyes locked. Keith tossed his cigarette aside and came toward me. I took a shaky step back, murmuring, "Why didn't you go in?" "The code's the same, it's your birthday." Keith did not say a word. He just grabbed me by the neck and kissed me hard. Before I knew it, I was backed up against the wall, and the door swung open with a couple of beeps. Keith half carried, half dragged me into the apartment, and then down onto the bed. Keith towered over me, his eyes lingering on my lips before he finally broke the silence of the night. "Keep that Daniel away from Joan. He's an eyesore to her." The buzz in my head cleared up instantly. A sharp pain gripped my heart as I realized he shared Joan's opinion. My voice was raspy with emotion as I shot back, "Keith, you sure like to stick your nose in other people's business. Does Joan know you're overprotective even in bed?" Keith froze and our eyes, red with anger, clashed in the still air. Then out of nowhere, the phone rang. I jumped, watching as Keith calmly snatched the phone and hit the answer button. My mother's voice, livid and sharp, cut through. "Elsie, what a fine mess you've made. It's bad enough you're keeping a boy toy, but to bring him to your matchmaking dinner? You might not care about your reputation, but I do." I tried to grab the phone, but Keith pinned me down with ease, his other hand mischievously slipping under my clothes. I clenched my teeth, holding back any sound, but he squeezed my chin, forcing a soft cry from me. The line went dead silent. I was overwhelmed with unspeakable shame, my whole body burning with the urge to hide away. Keith's voice was cool and detached as he spoke into the phone. "Elsie's sick, I'm taking care of her." The call ended, and I was swept into another wave of agony. The next morning, a sharp pain in my chest woke me. To my surprise, Keith had not left. He was still sleeping next to me. The pain sent a cold sweat across my forehead, and I curled up on the edge of the bed, shaking, too scared to make a sound that might wake Keith. I had a foggy thought that I might not have much time left. Suddenly, the phone rang again, and Keith, half asleep, reached out and answered it. "Mr. Bradford, your mother's taken a turn for the worse. She's in critical care. You need to come to the treatment room fast." Keith did not waste a second. He was up and into his clothes in a flash. I fought through my own pain, grabbed his arm and blurted out, "Wait, I'm coming too." He paused, his gaze heavy, but he did not say no. Keith pushed the car to its limits, speeding all the way to the hospital. As we skidded to a halt outside the treatment room, a healer stepped out with a sorrowful shake of his head. "It's time to say your goodbyes," he said softly. Keith's face was a mask of calm, but his hand was ice cold. His complexion went ghostly white. I had never seen him so utterly lost. He walked in, and I could not help but follow. In those precious moments of clarity before the end, Sylvia was calm, her madness gone. Her eyes were sharp, cutting through me with loathing before locking onto Keith. "Keith," she demanded, "promise me you'll never be with Elsie. Not ever." Keith froze, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom," however, Sylvia would not have it. Her voice rose to a fevered pitch. "Swear it." I stood there, the world narrowing to the scene before me, to the single, piercing voice of Keith as he rasped, "I swear, Elsie and I will never be together." Sylvia's tension melted away. She closed her eyes with a satisfied smile, and drifted off. I was left reeling, the room spinning around me. For 5 long years, after Sylvia was left in the psych ward by the Alpha, I had paid a fortune for her care, always ensuring she had the best healer. Despite all that, I was given this. However, what I never saw coming was her final wish. She did not want Keith and me to be together. My eyes darted to Keith, heart pounding. He was already staring back at me, his eyes swirling with such intense emotions that I could not make out what he was feeling. In those few seconds of silence, I felt like I could not breathe. Without thinking, I stepped forward, longing to be closer to Keith. Then his hard voice cut through the air, "Leave." I trembled and backed out of the treatment room without a word. No sooner had I left than the nurse called me to pick up Sylvia's death certificate. Holding that piece of paper outside the room, it felt like it weighed a ton. Keith's gaze haunted me, and I could not decide whether to go back inside. "I'll take it." Joan had appeared out of nowhere. She did not wait for my answer and snatched the certificate from my hands. She then walked into the treatment room, as if it were the most natural thing to do. I watched as Joan gently touched Keith's shoulder, her voice a soothing whisper. "Keith, don't be too heartbroken. Your mom would have wanted you to be happy." I could not even begin to describe how I felt then. A mix of bitterness and a sharp, acidic pain drowned me, making my heart shudder with agony. 3 days later, at Sylvia's funeral, I stood quietly at the very back of the crowd. Keith and Joan were up front, laying flowers with the Alpha. Then my mother walked in, wearing a dress so bright it was almost blinding, strutting as if she owned the place. She bent down and laid flowers on Sylvia's grave, all eyes on her in shock. I could not believe it. Sometimes, I just could not fathom how my mother could live so shamelessly. Keith's expression darkened, his hands balled into fists, and with a glare that could freeze hell over, he spat at my mother. "How dare you show your face here?" Under Keith's intense stare, my mother just kept on grinning wildly. She playfully flicked her hair, and her eyes slowly found me, lingering at the back of the crowd. "Elsie, why are you all the way back there? Come up front." I froze, feeling every stare piercing through me like nails. When I did not move, my mother approached with a smile, took my hand and said, "If it weren't for Elsie being so thoughtful and informing me, I would have been clueless about your mother's incident, Keith. As your stepmother, I'll step in for her and look after you properly." My mind went blank, and I tried to shake off my mother's grip, but she held me firmly, like a hawk clutching its prey. The next thing I knew, I was locked in Keith's sharp gaze. Keith's jaw was tight, and he spat out the words with venom. "Elsie, you've really outdone yourself." His eyes were so icy, so alien and frightening. It felt like any warmth between us had evaporated in an instant. I stumbled over my words, desperate to explain. It wasn't me. I didn't tell her. However, Keith did not seem to hear me. He stooped to pick up the bouquet my mother had offered and hurled it at us without a shred of mercy. "Take your daughter and these flowers and get out. Don't disrupt my mother's funeral." Petals fell like tears to the floor. Joan stepped in just in time, holding back the furious Keith, her voice a soothing balm. "Keith, stop. Your mother wouldn't have wanted her funeral turned upside down." Then she looked at me, her voice firm. "Elsie, don't make things harder for your brother. Take Luna and leave now." The mention of Luna only fueled Keith's rage further. I grabbed my mother, and we made a beeline for the exit, practically running for our lives. I could not bear to face Keith any longer. For days, I tried reaching out to Keith, but no matter how I spun my words, pleading or tempting, my messages vanished into the void. The painkillers the healer gave me were losing their magic touch. Even with the meds, the pain would creep back, clawing through my body, relentlessly. I would curl up in a ball at the edge of my bed, my head heavy, eyes fixed on the little clay figures on my desk. Keith and I had made them goofy versions of each other. I had grabbed them on my way out when we split. Right then I was hit with a wave of longing to see Keith so strong it was like a physical ache. Pain be damned. I propped myself up and stumbled to the PAC's office to find him. Ever since Keith's big trial, he had been back with the PAC, working in the office, getting ready to step up as the alpha. I knocked and hearing his voice, a voice that used to make everything okay, say, "Come in." It was like a shot of adrenaline. The pain melted away. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Keith looked up, but his eyes turned frosty when he saw me. "You shouldn't be here." My heart skipped a beat, but I was desperate for answers. I forced a smile, looking at the face that haunted my dreams, and whispered, "Keith, are you going to ditch me again?" It was like a replay of when my mom got with the alpha, and Keith dumped me on the spot. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why did their happiness have to trample over us? Why out of everyone in the world, did I fall for the one guy I couldn't have? Then none of that mattered. All I wanted was for Keith to love me one last time before I checked out, even if it was just pretend love. Keith's face froze for a moment, but his icy demeanor did not change. "We have nothing between us. What's there to abandon?" he said, his voice flat. "I just want to reset everything." His words hit me like a punch to the gut, casually wiping away all that had happened between us. The impact was terrifyingly potent. I felt a lump in my chest, and I doubled over, coughing so hard it felt like my heart was ripping apart. When I finally caught my breath, I looked at my hand, covered in fresh blood. Keith saw it too. His expression darkened, and he was at my side in an instant, his voice deep with concern. "What's going on?" My heart skipped a beat, and I hid my hand behind me. A thought crossed my mind. If I told Keith about my sickness, would he soften? Would he change his mind? I tried to act nonchalant, figuring out how to break the news about my illness. However, Keith read me all wrong. His eyes grew icy and he shook off my hand. "You're lying to me again," he said, his voice like ice. That word again was dripping with disgust and indifference. I had faked being sick before, desperate for his attention after my mom got together with the alpha, and I did not want to lose Keith. He had been tricked one too many times and thought I was up to my old tricks. His accusation doused my courage like a bucket of ice water. I went pale, managing a weak, wry smile. "Yeah, I'm just faking it, looking for a bit of your concern." I gripped the blood I had coughed up and walked away. In the days that followed, I left Keith alone. Instead, I called up a lawyer, ready to put my affairs in order. The cemetery sales guy was all smiles and way too eager. "This plot's a hot ticket at $100 grand, primo location. Lots of folks are lining up for it. If you don't snap it up now, it'll be gone in a flash." Hearing his well-rehearsed spiel, I could not help but crack up. They said when someone was dead, that was it, game over. However, apparently even the final resting place had its VIP section. My chuckle seemed to kick his enthusiasm up a notch. "It's right by the main road, super tidy, easy to get to, perfect for when friends and family come to visit." I gotta admit his pitch got to me, and I was just gonna grab any old cheap plot. Card swiped, contract signed. I found myself hoping maybe Keith would wander by, spot my stone, and spare a thought for me, even if it was just once a year. Back from the graveyard, I parked across from the PAC's office. No makeup today. I was just gonna sneak a peek at Keith and bail. His threats had me on edge. I snorted at the irony. There I was, knocking on death's door, but still aiming to go out with a little class. However, Keith was a no-show, and just as I was about to split, disappointed, someone rapped on my window. I jumped, then scowled at Jones' grinning mug before rolling down the glass. "Elsie, fancy bumping into you here. Are you looking for Keith too?" she beamed. I shot back. "Nope, just passing through." However, before I could even finish, Joan bolted, latching onto Keith's arm with a panicked look, tears and all. "Keith, I have no clue why Elsie's here bugging me again." Her drama queen act was enough to make my blood boil. I scrambled out of the car and blurted out to Keith, "I'm not here for her, okay?" Keith shot me a look, then wrapped Joan up in his arms, whispering, "Don't mind her, let's bounce." They brushed past me like I was just part of the scenery. Keith. I reached out, trying to snag his jacket, my fingers straining until they blanched. Keith spun around, his eyes icy, like he was staring down a total stranger. He yanked his jacket free from my grip and said, "Elsie, get a grip. You've worn out your welcome." His words, so sharp and distant, rooted me to the spot. I lost all my fight to keep him there. Waking up, I found myself in a hospital room, staring at the stark white ceiling and wondering if I was knocking on death's door. I grabbed my phone and the truth hit me hard. I had been out for 3 days, and today was Keith's bonding ceremony. The sun was blazing outside, but all I felt was a chill creeping through me. After a while, I snuck out of the room. Back home, I slapped on some makeup and slipped into my fanciest dress. Keith had sent me an invite, and I had to see it for myself. Car was stranded at the PAX office, so I had to hail a cab. As I waited, a black sedan screeched to a halt in front of me. Before I knew it, I was yanked inside, a hand clamped over my mouth and nose, and everything went black. When my eyes flicked open again, I was staring at the ruins of an abandoned construction site. Daniel was there, looming over me. The moment I stirred, he grabbed my shoulders and gave me a shake. "I didn't want it to get this messy, Elsie, but you wouldn't cough up the cash." "I had no other choice," he growled, his eyes wild. "Elsie, just think of it as a loan, will you? I swear I'll pay you back someday." With a poker face, I spilled the truth. "I'm broke. I gave it all away." Daniel's face contorted even more. "You can hand over your cash to total strangers, but you won't cough it up to save my life?" His grip was crushing my shoulders, pain flashing through me, forcing my eyes shut. "I told you ages ago to quit." Daniel used to be that broke but brilliant student. Now, a gambler on the edge. He gave me that wild look, zeroing in on the ruby necklace I wore. In a flash, he ripped it from my neck. "This piece screams fancy. Hand it over." However, that necklace was from Keith, and I could not let it go. I fought back hard. "No way. Not this." Somehow, I found the strength to hold on to Daniel's hand. His eyes turned savage. "You made your choice, don't blame me." Then, a dagger's cold gleam, and it plunged into my stomach. A wolf's howl of pain echoed inside me. I gasped for air, my body hitting the floor. Daniel snatched the necklace and ran, ditching the knife. I crawled to it, cut myself free. Blood was everywhere. With shaking hands, I dialed the last number I would ever call. It rang and rang until Keith picked up. I wanted to hear his voice one last time, but the words just would not come. As the sacred march played cheerfully on the other end, I closed my eyes for the last time in that crimson tide. 11 o'clock, at the ceremony. Cameras flashed nonstop, capturing Keith and Joan's big day. Keith and Joan were in the middle of their ring exchange, the air filled with the kind of mushy music that makes them think of forever. Keith took the ring from the little ring bearer, his eyes locking with Joan's, which were shimmering with tears. However, out of nowhere, his thoughts drifted to me. I had not shown up today, had not even called, which was nothing like me. Everything was supposed to be wrapped up neatly. He took a deep breath and tried to slide the ring onto Joan's finger, but it snagged on her glove right at the second knuckle. A weird sense of emptiness washed over Keith, wiping the smile right off his face. It had taken him back to a time when I had been curled up against him, playfully demanding he mark me with a ring pull from a soda can. He had indulged me, getting down on one knee and trying to fit the makeshift ring. However, it had gotten stuck just like then, and I had laughed it off with a kiss, joking that I would have to settle for a real ring. Snapped back to the present by his growing annoyance, Keith pushed the ring onto Joan's finger with a final shove. Her smile bloomed, and the room burst into applause. However, the celebration was cut short when the doors flew open, and the noise of trouble spilled in. 2 guys who worked for Keith rushed in, their faces tense. "Sir, there's trouble," they blurted out, and the chatter around them spiked. Keith's brow furrowed in confusion. "What's going on?" he demanded. One of the guys was sweating as he stammered out the news that hit like a punch to the gut. "We just got a call. They found a woman's body at the old factory. It's your sister, Elsie. Her last call was to you." The words struck Keith like a hammer blow, leaving an empty space in his heart and his thoughts in a whirl. Not even the news of his mother's passing had hit him that hard. Keith couldn't accept it. This just couldn't be true. Elsie dead? How could someone so full of life, so stylish, end up lifeless in a forgotten factory? Could Elsie really be gone? At that moment, the Alpha got the call too. His expression turned stone-cold serious. He murmured instructions to his team, and they moved swiftly towards Joan. With a swift motion, they slapped a pair of silver handcuffs on her wrists. Miss Ferguson, evidence suggests you've been stirring up trouble, leading the charge on Elsie's kidnapping. We can't dismiss the chance they've gone as far as murder. You're a suspect now, and you're coming with us. Joan's face locked up in shock, and Keith whipped his head around to stare at her. His eyes were a dark, icy black, sending shivers down her spine. Keith remembered the moment before the ceremony kicked off. His phone had buzzed, only for Joan to grab it. She claimed there was a snag at the venue that needed his immediate attention. He had his doubts, thinking maybe the call was from me, but he let it go, cutting off any lingering thoughts. Little did he know, it was a cry for help. The word kidnapping echoed in Keith's head, his heart ablaze with urgency, a mix of agony and collapse, wishing nothing more than to find those who hurt me and turn them into nothing but pulp. For the first time, Joan found herself under Keith's icy glare, like she was prey to a beast ready to rip her throat out at any second. The intent to kill unmistakable. Her heart was a whirlwind of panic as she stumbled back. Keith, I swear, you have to believe me, I'd never hurt Elsie. Joan managed to pull herself together, offering the Alpha a strained smile. Alpha, there's got to be a mix-up. How could I ever do something so cruel to my husband's sister? Maybe someone's trying to play us, to pit our packs against each other. The Alpha's face was a mask of ice as he cut her off. Truth or not, the investigation will sort it out. Our pack won't stand for a Luna who's a killer. Joan, go with them. Just like that, the ceremony was over. And Joan ended up in separate interrogation rooms, courtesy of the Alpha. After grilling Keith, the Alpha let him go with a pat on the shoulder. Keith, take a break from the office for now. We'll talk when we've got this mess sorted. My murder had been blasted all over a live-streamed ceremony, and then it was the talk of the pack. I did not need to check the web to know it was a complete media frenzy. I needed the truth, fast, to clear my name. Keith got up at that, straightening his tie with a look of exhaustion he could not hide. Okay, can I see Elsie's body? Alpha gave a nod. A subordinate led Keith to the morgue, sneaking peeks at his face. I was Keith's sister, the victim, and he had always been good to me, at least to the outside world. Which made the subordinate wonder, why was Keith so cool about my death? Keith's beta swung the morgue's door wide open, and a blast of icy air hit them. Keith could swear he heard the hum of the cooling system, the kind of chill that seemed to seep into his bones. There I was lying solo on the hard, cold slab, the silence so loud it was suffocating. Keith froze, unable to move. Without getting any closer, Keith knew it was me. His head spun with a sudden dizziness. I was there, serene as ever, dressed in my favorite blue skirt that cinched at the waist and fell to my knees. It was the skirt he had always said I looked stunning in. The realization hit Keith like a punch to the gut. I had died on my way to his bonding ceremony, clutching the invitation he had sent me. Sir. His beta's voice snapped him back to reality. Keith was not indifferent. He was in agony, his calm nothing more than a facade. Keith shook off the shock and moved closer. He had seen his share of the dead, but accepting that I was the one lying there was something else entirely. In his memories, I was distant when quiet, a whirlwind of charm when I laughed, but never like that, pale and lifeless. Keith's gaze lingered on my face, his heart silently screaming. Elsie, come on, open your eyes, look at me. However, my eyes remained shut, my face etched with the stillness of death. He reached out, his hand trembling as he touched my icy cheek. Keith's breath hitched. He had always wished I would know when to stop, that our meetings were only hurting us both, that letting go was for the best. However, then I was gone. He staggered back, his balance off, and then he saw it. My right hand was gripping something tightly. With a shaky heart, Keith knelt down to pry my fingers open, needing to see what I held onto in the end. Keith was terrified of causing me any more pain. He tried to be gentle, warming my hand slightly before he cautiously unfolded it. There in my open palm, was a shard of a necklace, glinting faintly. A memory flashed through Keith's mind. It was a piece of the very gift he had once given me. The Alpha and Keith had been on the case, and at last, they uncovered the truth. Joan had known about Keith and me all along. She was scared I would show up and wreck her big day. So she convinced Daniel to snatch me away. What she had not counted on was Daniel's greed, turning him into a killer for the right price. When Keith found out, he was livid. He kicked Joan out of the pack without a second thought, making sure she paid dearly for what she had done to me. Daniel got tricked into a scheme that left him drowning in debt. Debt collectors got their hands on him, beat him to a pulp, and tossed him to the sharks. After the dust settled, my body was taken to the funeral home I had picked out for myself a while back. That was when Keith learned of my secret battle with a deadly illness. He handled my last rites like he was numb, keeping my phony mother at bay while cremating me himself. He had been through that grim routine once before when Sylvia passed, so he knew the drill. Keith felt like a rusted machine, going through the motions without a flicker of emotion, no tears, no smiles. It was not until my ashes were sealed in an urn that Keith's knees buckled, and he had to catch himself against the wall. He could not put into words what he was feeling. Everything screamed that I was gone, yet he could not wrap his head around it. On the funeral day, a mysterious woman in black, hiding behind dark sunglasses, made her appearance. She strode up to Keith without bothering to take off her sunglasses, her posture radiating confidence. With a swift motion, she slapped him right across the face. Keith's reaction was surprisingly subdued. He just nudged his cheek with his tongue, and gave her a detached look. The sight of him, so devoid of life, infuriated her. In a flash, she ripped off her sunglasses, revealing her stunning face, her eyes blazing with anger as she yelled, "Keith, do you even remember your promise? You swore you'd look after Elsie. How could you let her down? That's my best friend Luciana." The second she got the news of my death, she raced back to our pack, only to realize she had missed the chance to see my face one last time. Years ago, heartache had driven her away, vowing never to return to that place of sadness. However, she never thought she had come back because I was gone. Becoming friends was a surprise to us both. I was the calm and laid-back one, while she was all fire and passion, always seeking out the buzz of life. Keith remembered her well. Back in college, Luciana was always there, supporting my relationship with Keith. We were a trio, always seen together, and Keith could not help but feel a twinge of jealousy over Luciana. He was my devoted boyfriend, and Luciana was my treasured friend. I had insisted that she had to be at our bonding ceremony. None of us could have imagined that our next meeting would be like that, with everything so utterly changed. For the first time, Keith's stoic face showed a flicker of pain as he grappled with his feelings. I failed her, I couldn't keep her safe. That night, Keith and Luciana kept vigil by my grave. They went through my things, knowing that from now on, those items would be all they had to remember me by. Keith recalled my dream of being a writer, and besides the gifts from him and Luciana, all that was left were my manuscripts. Keith scanned each note with intense focus. Some captured the little moments of happiness in everyday life. Others were deep thoughts about existence, and then there were the sappy love notes. He was lost in them, greedily soaking up every detail about me from the past 5 years. However, then, Keith's eyes locked onto a blood-stained manuscript. His hands shook as he realized that I must have been in bad shape when I wrote those words. I never lived recklessly or freely, and now there's no second half to my life. Everyone I loved, and those who loved me, are gone. It's been hard, and though I don't regret it, I can't help feeling sad about the dreams I never got to live. Those sentences hit Keith like a punch to the gut, and he had to breathe deeply to find his balance. Meow. Out of nowhere, a cat's cry drew their eyes. A little white cat had slipped into the graveyard unnoticed. She was pure white, with eyes like sparkling sapphires, absolutely stunning. Keith was taken aback by the cat's gaze. Its emotionless slit pupils were staring right at him, in a way that felt eerily human. He stared back so long, he could almost see me in its eyes. Keith thought he was losing it. He looked away, let out a wry chuckle, but when he glanced back, the cat was still there. The white cat, with a regal air, had sauntered past him, rubbing against his leg as if doing him a favor. Luciana paused, then looked at Keith with a heavy gaze, and said with a hint of mystery, "Keith, have you ever heard that old tale? They say that on the day of their funeral, the departed come back as an animal to visit the ones they still yearn for." Keith froze, his eyes glued to the white cat. His voice shook as he called out, "Elsie." The white cat meowed back, as if in recognition, and nuzzled his leg once more. In that instant, Keith's heart gave a little flutter, like it was waking up from a long sleep. He had picked up that white cat on a total whim, and over time, it became his constant sidekick. One day, Keith noticed something weird. The cat would bolt whenever blueberry jam popped up in the house. It was like the cat was in on my secret. We both could not stand the stuff. On the anniversary of my death each year, he would bring the cat to my grave. Petting its soft fur, he would whisper, "Elsie, next time around we're going to do it right, you and me." Just like that, Keith and the cat he called Elsie stuck together through thick and thin.